Hello, welcome to the Friday Show. I'm CJ Werleman. Thank you for joining us. And please join us here every Friday for a breakdown of some of Inside Arabia's coverage and analysis of the MENA region. Inside Arabia is a young, independently funded online magazine that presents the truth about the Arab world as the Arab people live it, not how the Western media portrays it. I write for them as well as many other talented journalists, so please hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out. In this episode, we'll examine three major events impacting the Middle East, including Iraq's final reparations payment to Kuwait for the 1990 invasion, the Emir of Qatar's visit to Washington, D.C., and Amnesty International's allegation of apartheid against the State of Israel. Now let's get started. We start with Inside Arabia contributor Austin Bodetti, who provides a deep analysis on the Iraqi government's final payment of $44 million to Kuwait, which rounds out the $52 billion it had owed in damages for Saddam Hussein's 1990 invasion. From the vantage point of the US mainstream media, the final door has now been closed on Operation Desert Storm. Justice has not only been served, but fulfilled. But Bodetti sees things differently, and he questions whether these billions of dollars have delivered justice for anyone at all. That is with the notable exclusion of the already insanely rich and corrupt Kuwaiti royal family. Bodetti argues that while the United Nations acted responsibly in demanding Iraq pay Kuwait reparations in the 1990s, the logic underpinning that decision unraveled soon after the US invasion of Iraq in 2003, which has left that country in economic and political ruin. Bodetti says that this dynamic paints an uncomfortable image in the 21st century, an aspirational impoverished democracy sending billions of dollars to an autocratic, wealthy monarchy that aided Saudi Arabia's intervention in Yemen, which has left that country faced with the world's worst humanitarian crisis. The reality is this: Kuwait suffered far less injury from Saddam's military invasion than Iraq suffered under 10 years of US military occupation and bombardment, which not only unleashed a bloody sectarian civil war in 2006, but also the Islamic State in 2014. So if anybody should be paying reparations here, it's the United States, whose criminal actions led to the premature deaths of hundreds of thousands of innocent Iraqi civilians. And as Bodetti rightly argues, the money Baghdad was forced to pay Kuwait in reparations during the post-US invasion and post-ISIS reconstruction period could have played a vital role in rebuilding Iraq's pulverized economy and infrastructure. Now let's turn our attention to contributor Sami Hamdi, who provides insightful commentary on the Emir of Qatar's visit to Washington, D.C., which culminates a remarkable comeback from the diplomatic isolation Qatar was forced to endure during the Trump presidency. In fact, one could argue that under President Biden, Qatar has experienced a total reversal of fortunes, now finding itself at the heart of US foreign policy and not sidelined as a so-called Muslim Brotherhood coddling pariah state, as it was by Trump and his pro-Saudi, pro-Emirati and pro-Israeli acolytes. Hamdi rightly notes that since Biden's inauguration, the blockade has been lifted, ties with Saudi Arabia have improved dramatically, relations with Egypt have been restored, and a truce with other rivals has been achieved. On the flip side, Hamdi argues Qatar's chief protagonists, Saudi Arabia, Egypt and the UAE, have been left out in the cold. Three countries that enjoyed unfettered access to the Oval Office during the 4 years Trump occupied the White House. And finally, we come to my most recent article, which speaks to Israel's comically absurd response to allegations made by Amnesty International that Israel is operating a system of apartheid in the occupied Palestinian territories. Now, as we know all too well, the Israeli government and its right-wing supporters have long established a track record of smearing its critics as anti-Semitic. They do it so often and so reflexively that the tactic is as transparent as it is vacuous. I mean, a former UN ambassador recently smeared Hollywood actress Emma Watson as an anti-Semite for merely expressing solidarity for the Palestinian people on her Instagram account. So nobody was surprised when the Israeli government accused the widely respected UK-based human rights organisation Amnesty International of anti-Semitism after it accused Israel of apartheid. But here's the kicker. Israel levelled these charges against Amnesty International a full day before the human rights group had even published its report. In other words, Israel accused the report's content of being anti-Semitic even before it, or anybody else for that matter, had actually read it. But if accusing Israel of apartheid is akin to anti-Semitism, which it most definitely is not, then Israel must explain how predominantly Jewish journalists and editors at the Israeli newspaper Haaretz are anti-Semitic, for they too have laid charges of apartheid against the Israeli government. Likewise, Israel will also have to explain why Israeli human rights group B'Tselem and no less than a dozen other Israeli human rights and civil society groups have all leveled the exact same charge. Clearly, Israel has run out of ways to defend the indefensible in resorting entirely to baseless and vapid smears against its critics. You can find all three of these articles and more on InsideArabia.com. Make sure to follow Inside Arabia on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Anyway, that's my time for today. This has been the Friday Show with CJ Werleman. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you next week, same day and same channel.